Well, last week's episode certainly generated some amazing comments, suggestions and constructive criticism. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, pop back to last week's episode and have a watch and look through the comments section and you'll see what I mean. Basically though, it's all about how we're going to get solar panels onto the boat and our plans to incorporate those into our cockpit enclosure. Now normally we just answer those comments on a kind of one-to-one basis because it's really good for the metrics when you guys comment on the videos and we get the chance to reply, and that boosts the views on the video, which is great. But because lots of you are asking the same questions, making the same comments and kind of offering the same kind of criticism, I thought maybe it's a good idea if I actually address those in a video, which is what I'm doing now. So first of all, let's look at the why. Why do we want to build a roof over the cockpit area of our boat, and what are we actually trying to achieve by doing that? Our first reason for wanting to put a cover over the cockpit is protection from the elements, protection from the sun, the rain, the wind and what have you. Now we've had a lot of comments saying, surely the whole point of going sailing is to experience the elements. Isn't it a bit hypocritical or pointless to make the cockpit enclosed? We love being outdoors. We live in the countryside and we spend a lot of time sailing and climbing and hiking and being out in the elements and all that kind of stuff. And when we're out racing, like Melissa races with a girls team in Pwllheli, and I've done quite a bit of racing in the past, it's great to feel the salt spray on your face and feel the wind ripping through your hair and really enjoy and immerse yourself in the kind of rawness of that experience. But for living aboard 365 days a year and crossing large expanses of water and crossing oceans where you're going to be outside and exposed for days or even weeks at a time, and spending time living at anchor in the Mediterranean or the Caribbean with 2 kids and 2 ginger adults and hoping to do that comfortably in an unprotected open cockpit, well, that's just silly. And if you take the time to look at any live aboard YouTube channel, and there are lots of them, you'll find that all of them have some sort of cockpit enclosure or protection, even if it's just one of the fold out bimini type things. Now the second reason for us to build a cockpit enclosure is to create real estate for solar panels. On a catamaran like Zatara or big boats like that, it's dead easy to find plenty of space to put loads and loads of solar. But it's a known fact that getting enough solar for a live aboard family on a monohull is a really, really tricky thing to do. And in a minute, I'm going to explain in detail how we actually propose to do that and where our solar panels are all going to be. Our third reason for putting a solid top on the cockpit enclosure, if we can do it, is to catch water. Now we don't have a water maker at the moment and it's not something we can afford. They're very, very expensive things. So being able to have a solid top with a gut around the edge, with some drain holes in the corners which lead to pipes which lead into our water tanks, mean that it'll be a lot easier for us to catch water than this.
I've discovered that when it rains, it drips down my mainsail through the boom and out these 2 little holes on the back of the boom,
for example, and a lot easier for us to achieve this.
And one day in Bermuda, we catch water from it.
Yeah.
That's our water maker. We catch water. We left it open because water is so expensive in Bermuda. Went ashore, big thunderstorm came. And because it vented out of there, of course, the tank filled up like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
The air went out of it. And then the water went up the vent, through the bookshelves, down through there where I keep all the paper towels and toilet paper and everything, down across the bunks and into the bilge and filled the bilge up with water in one thunderstorm.
Wow.
So if you don't think catching water is efficient, it's very efficient.
Yeah.
So that's the why. Now let's look at the how. Let's have a look round Ocean Melody and see where we can't put solar panels. A lot of people suggested putting arch at the back of the boat here on the transom, like Delos have, picture of Delos. Now we're a yawl, Delos is a ketch. So our mizzen mast is aft of the rudder post, which means that our mizzen boom overhangs the transom. So we just can't, it would be impossible. We could, in theory, we could make some sort of contraption that sticks out from the transom and puts the arch way, way out the back. That would massively extend the overall length of the boat, which would be adding to the costs of going into marinas, but it would look ridiculous, I think. The other option that we could potentially do is cut the actual mizzen boom down and reduce the size of the mizzen sail, and that's potentially an option, but it's not something we're prepared to go into at the moment. So putting an arch out the back for this boat at this point, no, not going to happen. Well, what about the huge foredeck space we've got here? Surely we could put some solar up here. Well, we can certainly put panels out when we're at anchor. We can put removable ones, but most of the time our dinghy's going to live on the foredeck. It's going to live up here, and we're going to hoist it up on a halyard because we won't have davits, because the mizzen boom overhangs the aft end, and because we've got a hydrovane. So our dinghy's going to live on the foredeck like it does on a lot of boats. So that means we can't have fixed panels on the foredeck. The other reasons for not doing it, they would have to be flexible panels to take up the curve, and flexible panels are not as efficient as rigid ones. They would have to be walk-on panels, and even the panels that say you can walk on them, well, you can, but they definitely degrade more over time because of being walked on. That's a note, that's obvious, it's not rocket science. And also they trap sand, dirt and debris underneath the panel, which is going to damage the teak and eventually damage the panel. It's like if you put a panel over a pebble and then stand on it, it's going to cause more damage. So that's not something I particularly want to do. And I'd be putting loads of screw holes in the teak. And one of the things I love about this teak deck is it was laid down with no screws. It's bonded down. So why put screws in a teak deck that's got no screw holes in? So we're not going to be putting solar panels fixed on the foredeck, but we will be putting out kind of the removable ones that we can bring out when we're at anchor for a couple of days and then put away when we're on passage. So what can we do? Where can we put panels? Well, we can put panels here at the side, not this one particularly, this is one of the flexible ones I was talking about, but we can put panels here on the side. We can put replace this cable with some solid 25mm bar and create some mounts so that these panels can be folded down so that they don't get clattered off when we come into a marina, and we can angle them up to the wind, to face into the sun, depending on the angle that we're at. That's definitely somewhere we're going to have panels, one either side. Another place that occurred to me that we can have a panel is here, forward of the mizzen mast, aft of the main sheet track. It occurred to me this is our boarding ladder. So this boarding ladder here normally hangs over the side, and I popped it there and I thought, oh, hang on, we can put a panel there. Again, I'm using this one just to illustrate the principle. It may not be this panel, but look at that. We can put a panel there. Now, it can't come any further forward than that because of the main sheet track, and it can't come any further back right up to here because this cap here removes to access our emergency tiller. So this is as far back as it can come. So it's not going to be a huge panel, but I can probably get at least 120 or maybe 175 watt panel in there. That would be ideal. So that would just mean building a little frame somewhat similar to this ladder actually, with a couple of little legs either side that just bolt down onto that coach roof. Cool, eh? And then the other place that we can put solar is this planned idea of putting a cockpit enclosure over the actual cockpit itself to create shade, to catch water, and to create some real estate for solar panels. Now, if you look at all of these channels that I'm showing on the screen now, they've all got cockpit enclosures with panels on the top. So you can see that having this kind of arrangement is a really, really common solution. It's kind of standard practice. So much so that a lot of boats actually come out of the factory with this kind of addition. It's not even an addition, they come out of the factory with that enclosure already in place and as part of the original design. Ocean Melody was designed as an ocean racing boat. So she didn't come out of the factory with a cockpit enclosure. So the kind of idea of fitting one would kind of annoy ocean racers, I can completely agree. She was designed to cross oceans safely and fast. So putting one on wouldn't be appropriate for a race boat, but for living aboard, it's an absolute no-brainer.
So this is what we have at the moment, right? Just a normal folding spray hood, which as you can see doesn't have anywhere near enough room for solar. And anyway, if you put a solar panel on it, it won't fold down anymore, so what's the point in that? Now, here's the boat with the masts and rigging and all the other bits and pieces, and there's the existing spray hood. Last week's effort was making the frame for the idea that I'd got in my head, but I agree it's too tall, the front's too steep, it doesn't come back far enough, and it would be nice to have the front curved a bit more like the curve of the boat itself. So let's make some changes to that design. I've made the whole thing a bit lower and I've brought the framework back to cover the helm position. I've curved the front to match the curves of the deck moulding and I think that looks a lot better. We can't do big sweeping bends with the equipment that Nigel has, so we have to do it in straight pieces of steel with shorter bends. But remember, the actual shape of the roof that fits to this can be whatever we want. I will definitely have a transparent or removable section above the helm so that I can see the masthead, and I'll build up a fiddle along the sides that will act as a grab rail to help catch water. While I'm in an artistic mood, let me just also go back to what I was saying about having an arch out the back. If we were to put an arch out the back of the boat like this, with it kind of resting on the deck and angled backwards, so it's got a nice bit of leverage going on there with a solar panel over the top. The problem is, as you can see, it's going to completely get in the way of the mizzen boom, and that would be totally impossible and completely impractical. Now look, if we take it right out the back of the boat like this, it just looks ridiculous, and it would massively increase the overall length of the boat as well, which of course nobody wants. So the decision I've come to is this: we're going to have two panels, one either side of the aft deck, one panel just behind the main sheet forward of the mizzen mast, and two panels on the cockpit enclosure, which will give us between 1200 and 1500 watts, depending on what panels we can get hold of.
So one radical suggestion which has been offered by the owner of another one of these, the Bowman 47, which is the sister boat to this, and there's somebody with one in Australia, I believe, and they've said, get rid of your mizzen mast completely, just ditch it. There's little benefit from it as a sail, and what you will gain in terms of real estate to put a big canopy type affair here will be worth it. Now, I totally understand where they're coming from. For me, I can't bring myself to do that. I think there will be some benefit to the mizzen, certainly for going downwind, for balancing the boat. Even if it doesn't create much power, it will create more balance. And for keeping the boat steady at anchor, there's lots of benefits to having it. Secondly, I can't bring myself to get rid of the mizzen because it just looks so fantastic. And thirdly, whilst I like the idea, what we may be able to do at anchor is remove the boom and hoist a kind of a teepee, which velcros around the mast, goes up the mast and then spreads out, and we can bungee it to the rails when we're at anchor for, you know, if we spend a week somewhere. It's definitely cool to have that kind of extra versatility to the aft deck, isn't it? Just unclip the boom from its gooseneck, stow it on the foredeck, and up you go with your teepee. Another suggestion that's been made, which I love, is to have solar panels manufactured into the sailcloth. Now, that's something that's being pioneered by Spirit Yachts at the moment. We spoke with one of the owners of the Spirit Yachts last year, who's having solar panels sewn into the actual sailcloth between the reefing points. Amazing idea, pioneering stuff, way out of our price range. We are actually in talks with Precision Sails about a complete new set of sails for Ocean Melody, so watch this space as time goes on about that. But I think if I spoke to the guys at Precision Sails and said, can we have solar panels sewn into them please, I think they might have a heart attack. So that's not going to happen. So the plan then is to do some more work on this monstrosity that a lot of you hated from last week. We need to lower it as per the suggestions and demands of the general public, which I completely understand. I agree, it's too high. We need to lower it. We need to round the corners, although that's a bit, in my head they're rounded anyway. It doesn't bother me that they're square. That's just because of the way that they're made. And we're going to bring it further back to cover the helm position and try to keep the look of it a little bit more in line with the sweeping, beautiful aesthetic of the boat. But as I have said over and over again, probably repeating myself too much now, please don't worry that this wooden thing looks a bit weird. Once it's made in stainless, it won't look anything like this. And also, the sides and the front will be all removable roll-up fabric. The only bit that's going to be, or potentially going to be solid, is the roof, where we put the solar panels, and from the side, you're not really going to see it. These are the original hoops from the original fold-up spray hood, and this curved piece of steel here is pretty much identical to the moulding around the front here. Now, we can't do that in the steel that we're going to be using, because the steel that we're going to be using is much thicker, much heavier walled, and the tube bender that we have is a bender, not a roller. So you can pull bends in it around 90 degrees or 45, but you can't do a long sweeping bend like this with the bender that we've got. But it's going to be hidden up underneath the roof anyway. So I've had an idea. Why don't I use this to kind of get the shape right? Then we can build our frame to be as close as possible to this as we can. So what I'm trying to get at, and I hope you sort of understand where I'm coming from, this piece of metal here comes from the original spray hood, and it mirrors that curve in the fiberglass. Bear in mind, you're not going to see any of this. All of this is going to be covered with a sheet of 25mm PET foam sandwich with fiberglass, which is going to be our water catcher tray and the kind of roof for this whole assembly. So if we accept the fact that I can't make a curve in wood, wood doesn't bend, and I'm not even going to be able to make it in the final stainless like that, or Nigel isn't, because we don't have that tool. But we can create a structure which kind of is like a 50p piece if you're British. I don't know what American coins have edges like that, but we can do something like that, and the final roof will sit on top and you won't see the stainless structure at all. Turn off my music so I don't get demonetized. Well, here's the roofy thing. Now I've got to do is get it up, but it's obviously not as high as it was before because I got in trouble for making it too high. So this time, I don't know how I'm going to start. Watch and laugh, people. I'm in the process of now making adjustable feet. So at the bottom of each leg, I've screwed a piece of plywood, which I can then adjust for height to get the height of this where I want it and need it to be. And I can also adjust the orientation of the feet themselves where they meet the fiberglass, so that when Nigel makes the proper metal feet up, they sit down nicely. Now, I've got this now so that from the cockpit floor to that piece of wood there is 6 foot exactly. So that means I'm 5'8", but somebody who's 6 foot could still stand under the wheel of this, because we're likely to have other people on board, aren't we? I can't see how we can make it any lower than that. It doesn't get in the way of the main sheet. That was something else that some people were saying, do be careful that you don't sort of make it such that it impedes the main sheet. So have a look at this. Let's just check. I'll eat my words if this is wrong. But now the main sheet is in no way affected. There you go, that's nice. Yeah, so that's good. Let's take it all the way over that side as well. Yeah, that's fine. So it doesn't get in the way of our main sheet operation. I'm going to cut an access hole. Oh, need to screw that up. I'm going to cut an access hole in this area here, which will have some clear perspex in. And maybe even a removable section, so you get a bit of breeze, but so that the helms person can stand here and look out at the top of the mast, see the Windex, see the masthead lights, and anything else that they feel they need to see. I always think being able to see the top of the mast is an essential. For me it is anyway. I come from dinghy sailing, so I sail by what's on the top of the mast and the sails. There's still a lot more to do. I need to make this more rigid and firmer and square everything up. And before I take it to Nigel's on Sunday, I'm going to screw a whole load of triangulation pieces in, which won't be in the final design. They're just there to hold the shape of this all together while we put it in transit. And like I say, remember, all of these sides will all be roll up, zip on, press stud on fabric. So as I can feel a lovely breeze blowing through here at the moment, I want to have a roll down section that rolls down, press studs in place or something, and gives protection to the cockpit. And then this will be our water catcher and solar panel thingy.
I want to do it so badly.
It's going to be a massive help to us, this. This is the Bluetti AC500, which is the charger and inverter, and the B300s, which is the battery bank. So there's your battery bank, and there's your kind of power stuff, and you have to plug the two together. So this isn't going to be a full review. There's loads of other channels that have done that and done a very good job of them. So if you want to see all the technical spec, go and look at somebody else's review, because it'll be much more in depth. But for us, this is a personal thing. Very basically, the specs are, you've got a 3072 watt hour battery bank, which feeds into the inverter charger. The battery bank itself has got a kind of a cigarette lighter socket on it, which will do 12 volts at 10 amps. And then it's got a 100 watt USB-C and an 18 watt USB-A. And you can turn the DC on and off to these sockets. That then feeds into this one, which is the inverter charger. And that obviously, when you plug solar panels or AC into this, it will charge the battery bank. This has got a 30 amp 12 volt DC, a 24 volt 10 amp DC. It's got 13 amp 3-pin UK style sockets, one 32 amp socket, so I can run the welder off it, which will be amazing. In fact, my welder will run off one of the 13 amp sockets. Not that we're going to do much welding on this boat, but you never know. I'm going to still take a welder with us, a little one, a stick welder or something, so I can do repairs. And then again, it's got 100 watt USB-C, two 18 watt USB-As, and then it's got another 100 watt USB-C and 3 amp USB-As. So it's got phenomenal amount of outputs on it, more than we'll ever need. We've already got, as you know, a decent battery bank and inverter charger, but this inverter will do 5,000 watts continuous and 10,000 watts peak. So it means that we can run all manner of stuff. Though we have got a little washing machine. Some of you are going to say, "You what, a washing machine on a boat?" Yes, because we've got a newborn baby. We don't want to be using too many disposable nappies and that kind of thing. But so we're going to have a lot of washing to do, aren't we, with a newborn baby and baby grows and that kind of thing. And if it's me and Melissa on our own, or even with Jack, you wash it in a bucket with a plunger. But with a newborn baby, I think it makes sense. So we've got a tiny little washing machine that will do a 3 kilo load or something. So we've got the washing machine. We can get rid of our propane and run an induction hob. We can run an aircon unit if we need to, because Melissa and I are both gingers. Ollie's ginger. We're not going to be great in baking hot sun all the time. We love being outdoors in the weather, but we do need some sort of aircon. I think in the hotter climates, not a priority at the minute. But it just means that that's it. We don't really have to think anymore about our kind of power needs aboard the boat. In terms of solar, well, that's what we're working on, isn't it? Let me show you what else Bluetti sent us. So this here is a huge fold-out solar panel, which we can put on the foredeck. I'll show you how this works. So I won't get the whole thing out for you right now, but that folds up and this folds out. Can you see that? And that gives us, I think this is 350 watts of solar. So it won't live outside permanently, but it means that when we turn up on an anchorage, we can shove this out on the foredeck and it will stay there for the duration of our stay in the anchorage or in the marina. We're going to add that to the solar panels that we're already putting on the boat, on the solar arch that we're making out the back. So the main benefit to having all this power on the boat is this is going to be our home. We're going to be living here all the time. And the one thing that you probably haven't considered, Jack is deaf, which a lot of you know, but he has cochlear implants and they have to remain charged. So apart from any other luxuries, we have to have a totally reliable battery system and power system on the boat for obviously navigation, depth sounders, all that kind of stuff, but for charging Jack's ears, because otherwise if his ears go flat and they don't get charged, it's really, really distressing for him. So that's super, super critical. And having this separate to our other lithium batteries means redundancy. And that is another thing that I'm just a huge fan of. We can lose that whole battery bank in a lightning strike. Hopefully we won't. But if we did, we've got a completely redundant separate system and they're not even linked. So we can put this at the one end of the boat, supplying our AC and all of our DC needs for one end of the boat, front or back, doesn't matter. And then the built-in kind of house bank supplies the rest of the boat as and when required. So we don't get a lot of complete sponsorships. Some of the stuff on the boat that you've seen that I've said, oh, thanks to this company or thanks to that company and thanks to this company, I think it gives the impression that we've been given loads and loads of stuff, and we haven't actually. A lot of that stuff we've either bought at full price or had a little bit of a discount, like a trade discount kind of thing, or we've had a bit off, 10% off, 15% off, or whatever. But this one Bluetti did give to us, and it means the world, probably more than anything else, because it means Jack can keep his cochlear implants charged. And I don't care what anybody says, for me as a dad, having the welfare of my kids is the priority, and for Jack, keeping his implants charged is a massive priority. So thank you to Bluetti for giving us this. I'm going to put some links in the description for other YouTube channels that have done really, really thorough and in-depth reviews of it. But yeah, this is just a personal thank you to Bluetti for making it possible for us to be more comfortable as a family and for Jack to keep his cochlear implants charged.
Okay, so this is kind of the final design. Bear in mind it's all going to be made in stainless, so it won't be horrible wood. We've got solar panels out the back, solar panels behind the main sheet, and we've got solar panels on top of the actual cockpit enclosure itself, which will have fabric sides which are removable, and that's what it looks like in wood. But this is what it will look like once it's got the stainless steel and the fabric in place. We said, shall we do this bit to camera while Ollie's quiet and not crying? And of course, by the time I've got the camera set up, he started crying. So this is a large reason why we're doing what we're doing, is this little man here. And he's not going to be tiny forever, of course, but he needs shade, and so do we all. Yeah. And this is really quite nice. It's still, just a wooden mock-up. So be nice. Yeah,
and there'll be roll down sides that when the sun's coming from that way, you can take it down there and and then a nice breeze through it.
Yeah, and from the side you can only see the posts. Of course, these bits of wood here, and they're just gussets to hold everything square and stuff for the time being. It's not going to be like that in its final form. But yeah, quite nice sitting out here in the sunset with a bit of shade.
Yeah.
The sun's right in my eyes, but at least it's not behind me. Well, as always, thank you very, very much for watching. This episode was not one that we were actually planning, because I thought that little mock-up of our proposed cockpit enclosure was going to be a fairly quick and simple affair. I'd build it in a couple of hours, take it up to Nigel's and let him crack on with the stainless work, and it's ended up taking me 2 weeks, not 2 hours. Thank you so much for your suggestions and your constructive criticism and your remarks. They have really made me think about how we progress forward with this, and hopefully you'll notice that the front slopes back a lot more than it did, the roof is a lot lower than it was, the back comes back further over the cockpit, and it's a lot more elegant. I'm still not happy, so I'm still going to be back here tomorrow making some further adjustments. I think the front is now too low and it slopes forward too much, and I need to make the actual feet where it attaches onto the boat so that it'll through bolt robustly with a big backing plate on the underneath. Because some of the people said they were concerned about the bolting mechanism and how robust that was going to be in the event of high winds or a breaking wave. And of course, we will engineer them so that they're very robust. But you don't need to see that. I think you guys have seen enough of me screwing together little bits of wood. So next week's episode will be very different. But we will be dropping this off with Nigel on Sunday. Andy is coming to help me help me take this up because we haven't got a tow bar anymore. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a fantastic week. Our episodes are coming out on some funny days at the moment because we've got such a lot going on with me quitting work and the new baby and trying to fit everything in and trying to get as much done as we possibly can. So thanks for bearing with us. I hope you're enjoying the content, and I really do appreciate the comments and remarks. And thanks again to our wonderful, wonderful patrons for the support that we get, and any of you that have given through Coffee and PayPal and super thanks and all of that kind of stuff. Have a lovely, lovely week, guys, and see you all next week. Bye-bye.